What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Cross Guild Chronicles. I am your host, Doug. That's my guy, Shady. Shady, couple weeks off here, man. Life is busy, but we brought it back. We've got chapter review for 1139 and 1140. How you feeling, man? How you been?
Good, man. Good, man. Yeah, like you said, life does get in the way sometimes, but we're always going to come back. We're always going to be back, and feel like our pacing's been solid. Just ready to talk about these chapters, dude. A lot going on, a lot to look forward to.
There really is a lot looking forward to and a lot going on in the world of One Piece right now. Talk to me a little bit about, One Piece in general. So, how have you felt about where we've gone? Like you said, it's been a couple weeks, 2 new chapters since we've been gone. How do you feel these last 2 chapters have kind of interwoven with what we've seen so far in Elbaf?
Yeah, well, it's certainly piggybacking off a lot of what we've theorized with the Holy Knights and establishing them as sort of the main antagonists of Elbaf and how that's connecting to all the lore that we found about Elbaf. It just, Elbaf in general is just a super important arc. This just feels like the kickoff to the final war. Egghead was like one of the craziest information dumps ever. And it seems like we're continuing with that, but also getting a traditional One Piece arc in a sense. If that makes sense.
This is definitely feels more in line with what we've seen before. But what I've liked about Elbaf so far is I feel like in other arcs we've kind of had some more dips, and it feels like Elbaf's been a consistent, maybe we'll get a little excellent chapter here, but it comes back to a consistent level. We haven't really had those down levels, and I've thought this has been some of Oda's most consistent work. Let's get into it, Shady. 1139. Nami, Zoro, and Luffy are with
Classic.
It's good to see those 3 back together. I've always enjoyed, their relationship, and like I've talked about in the past, I don't think we always get to see these dynamics like we used to. So it's nice when we do get to see them, and it's refreshing. They're in the castle, and they see the black marks on the ground, and of course, Luffy, being Luffy, cannot remember where he saw after just
Last Island, bro. Come on.
Having crazy battles with creatures. You can't remember what these symbols are. It's just classic Luffy.
I know, man.
Initial thoughts after seeing Gunko, after seeing Shamrock. Now we saw that, they show up in the castle. How are you feeling about those 2 so far?
About Gunko and Shamrock specifically? Yeah, it's interesting. I like Shamrock as an antagonist so far because he seems, obviously he's a Shanks twin, so we're going to think of Shanks every time we look at him and try to analyze what he's doing, but he seems kind of collected, like calm and collected, not too hasty with it. He's got interesting abilities for sure, and same with Gunko.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that shortly.
Looking forward to more expansion on that. But as far as us in the castle right now, I do enjoy the Romance Dawn trio dynamic, like you mentioned. They seem to be at the forefront of most of the dramas within One Piece as far as sometimes when arcs begin and what directions to take, because they are essentially the 2 main advisors to Luffy. Like Sanji's obviously the left-hand man, but Nami is the compass. She's the map, the direction of Luffy. So that is also a compliment that we can't underestimate in the story.
Not at all. So obviously they're with Rodo, and while they're in the castle, they run into a living legend, Shady, a guy who, has been rumored to be around for a long time. We've, going back to the silhouette of him and Crocus, now that we know it's him.
Yeah.
Back when they were meeting in front of Laboon. So we get to meet Scopper Gabon. Initial thoughts on seeing Scopper, how do you feel about his design? Obviously he's older, so it's not going to have that same jet black hair and all that stuff. And of course, you have to have that that pervert type guy on the crew, the Sanji correlation. How did you feel about Scopper on the first look?
Yeah, so I thought it was cool for sure. It's just exciting to see him, honestly, just at face value. We've always wondered throughout the series, are we even going to see this guy? Is he even going to be relevant, right? Because that was a thing for a while. People have kind of given up on Scopper Gabon being in the series. So it's cool to finally see him. Obviously, he's the copper to the silver and gold. So him being the left hand makes a lot of sense. And him having some Sanji tendencies is funny too, you know?
It is. It is funny. I love the dynamic of him mating with a giant is just so wild and
That's
so
so
One
funny.
Piece. It's
That's so
just the
damn
most
funny.
One Piece thing ever.
Yeah.
I like the fact that like he immediately mentions the fact that he felt the strange hockey coming from Shamrock and Gunko, and that's why he's here. You know,
Yep.
and then obviously he knows Luffy, he knows Luffy's background. He's heard of Luffy, he's talked to Shanks about him clearly. You know, he mentions that he beat Kaido, which, you know, narratively he did beat him, but
Mhm.
um how did you feel about the interactions between those two and the fact that he wanted to kind of test Luffy you know, with the key situation? How did you feel about that interaction between him and Luffy and how that kind of went down, and then Luffy and Zoro obviously getting more serious at the end?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's cool how they tied that back to the Shanks flashback as well, because obviously Gabon knows of Luffy and how Shanks views him as like the true successor, right? So
Mhm.
he's obviously going to want to test him in some ways. But it's funny how Luffy and Zoro are kind of reciprocating this because they don't know jack shit about him. They're just like, who's this old guy who's in
Right.
our way? Like he's annoying us. But they clearly find out that you can't underestimate people like that. And I think that's more of like a Luffy thing,
Yeah.
who always just underestimates people. His battle tendencies are to start slow.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
He's,
sometimes he gets his ass whooped, but yeah, I mean, it's cool. How did you feel about the interaction? Like,
so
did you think it was a good balance of Scopper showing off his stuff while not making Luffy too much of an idiot?
so that's the thing. I think in my opinion, obviously you and I checked out spoilers. We go into that. We talk about it beforehand. So the
Mhm.
way the spoilers were laid out made it a lot worse than it really was
Yeah, for sure.
in this like, you know, tussle, I'll call it. There wasn't really a fight. And I thought if anything they just played on the fact that Luffy wasn't being serious and Scopper wasn't being serious either. You know, he threw the axes at him and he did an axe move, but it was never malicious. He was just testing them. So I thought it, you know, all things considered, I like the fact that he, you know, he's the Pirate King's left hand, and you know, Luffy wants to be the Pirate King. So I like how they kind of intertwine that, and then you know, Zoro, which we'll transition to here. I'm interested. I'd almost like to see him and Scopper fight. Just like obviously they can't go all out, and we know that in the next chapter, you know, Zoro's ready to fight and he's able to block the attack. I would like to see them just to see, you know, how strong he actually is, because
Yeah,
at this point, you know, it's hard to tell the way that Oda power scales. So,
right.
you know, is Scopper on the same footing as Kaido? Is he, you know, where does he fit in the mix if it was to be serious? Because like I
Exactly.
said, you know, we don't get to see all out Luffy like he's, you know, life or death like he fought Kaido. It's only happened a few times. So, you know, I'm assuming Scopper's right in that mix. Let's, you know, how do you feel about his strength even at an older age? And you've said it many times. In One Piece, the older men, you know, the older generation holds their strength a lot better than
Exactly.
in other you know, media. So
Series. Yeah, for
how do you
sure.
feel? Where do you kind of slide him in without having any real knowledge? This is just kind of your opinion.
Yeah, like the speculation. So, like
Yeah.
you said, I do enjoy how Oda kind of gives old men their old strength, or at least allows them to tap into that strength, right? Where what they lose is more so on like the endurance factor, the rustiness, stuff like that. But Colin, is that how you say his kid's name? Is it Colin or Colin or something like that?
I think it's colon, but
Colin. But you know, he
just because it's OLO, I think it's colon, but
yeah.
it's all
So
the
he
same.
could just be gassing his own dad here, but he does say that none of the LBAP warriors were a match for him. I don't think that includes Loki because in the next chapter, as you know, Scopper says that nobody was able to stop Loki until Shanks captured him, right?
But do you think that
So
means he fought him though?
maybe, or maybe they scrapped a little bit. Who knows? So at this point, I am putting Gavin a little bit, at least old Gavin, a little bit underneath Loki,
Okay.
who I think is like, and I think Loki's like right under the top tiers, like right under the Yonko
Okay.
Admiral sort of deal.
Yeah.
So if I were to give like an opinion on Scopper, I'd say he's below all the top tiers as well. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, but I am going to put him below the top tiers, obviously. Like, you know, not quite. Rayleigh level, obviously, but
He's got to be slightly below
maybe the tier
Rayleigh.
below. Maybe the tier below is fair.
And also, I think we also have to come to that conclusion just because we didn't get to see it. We got to see Rayleigh use hockey. We got to see him, show off Ryu. We got to see some of that stuff. We got to see Scopper use. Obviously, we got to see him use observation hockey, and
Yep.
we know
Impressively, for sure.
he has Conqueror's hockey because based on the little black lightning bolts coming off the key. You don't think so?
Nah, I don't think it's
count
Conqueror's
that?
hockey, dude. Because Black Lightning is so inconsistently portrayed in One Piece that you don't actually know. Like, for instance, when Ulti uses the headbutt, she has the Black Lightning in the exact same way.
Yeah, but she's confirmed.
No, I don't think so.
Pretty sure she is.
I don't think so. I think that was more so like fan speculation. But here's what I'll say, bro. It's not impossible for him to have Conqueror's hockey, but it's definitely not like a for sure indicator, because what Oda does oftentimes is he'll say the person's having Conqueror's hockey, right? Like when Zoro used Ashura, he made sure Kaido pinpointed it. And then when Zoro used Conqueror's coding, he made sure to show people being knocked out. And Keen acknowledged the ambition, right? He's like, you have keenly ambition that proves the Conqueror's hockey. So when Gavin hits Luffy with the key, he says hockey. I feel like that would have been the perfect time for Luffy to go Supreme Keen hockey, because now that he's super familiar with it, So I don't think
that's interesting.
I don't think Gavin has Conqueror's hockey, but it's not impossiple for him to have it. That makes sense.
Well, that's okay. So let's transition. Let's transition to that chapter. We're already getting into it. He goads Luffy into this competition to find the key. This way we get to see him flex a little bit.
I love how he's carrying the axe.
Yeah, I love. I think the double axe is one of the cooler moves you can have as in terms of carrying weapons.
The battle axe is so sick. Yeah.
If you carry 2 battle axes, you're probably a monster. You just under that impression that you are a monster. So we see their interaction. Obviously, like you said, Luffy sees the hockey. The Black Lightning is kind of, hit or miss at this point, like you said. When he smashes it down, we see it's coated in black. I think, sticking the key in Luffy's mouth, all that's funny. Dodging all of Luffy's attacks like we saw Luffy do with the sumo fighter in a similar manner using the observation hockey.
Yep.
It's an impressive feat. And then he attacks, and I like the fact that he acknowledges Zoro in the back of the image, because Zoro is able to deflect his attacks, and then he gives him Luffy's got a fine crew. That comment right there, acknowledging that Zoro in his own right is a problem. Yes. And then and then we get to see Zoro and Luffy finally get serious.
Yeah, it's so fun when they team up, isn't it? It's like, oh man, it feels like a cheat code, honestly.
Well, I don't think there's anybody who could handle them.
Not at this point, no. Because the last time you'll ever see them fight seriously together, maybe I'll eat my words on this, but I'm pretty confident that the rooftop is the last time we'll ever see them go up against somebody going all out, because there's just nobody left who can handle that.
They've come too far. And it's funny, and I like that, Scopper smiles and he said, so that's the white form, and now he gets to see potentially what Elbath legend is, what they've kind of built their legendary, and he spent 20 years there now.
Mm-hmm.
He really, shows off his, I thought he flexed his observation hockey harder than anything.
I think so too.
I was most impressed with that.
And he chopped off part of the castle too.
Oh yeah, they demolished the castle.
It's huge. You got to put that in giant perspective. How big of a slash that massive is. Like that. I mean, okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but when Zoro cut the Onigashima horn, remember that? Was that wouldn't be as big as that quite, right? I don't think so. I'm bad at scaling the sizes. I'm not really sure, because this is a giant.
Wasn't that an Orz's head?
Yeah, so probably not. Huh?
So it's big. No, it's bigger.
The castle's bigger.
Orz is bigger than Giants.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so
that
horn is bigger. Yeah,
I would assume they're similar size.
Yeah, but you get what I mean, though. It's an impressive feat because of that.
Oh, for sure. No, that's a great feat, and it's I like that Oda continues to use slashes in that way, where it takes out a massive structure, and that way you get some kind of scale to it. But yeah, I think with Oars being the way they were, and they're 2 or 3 times bigger than regular Giants, Like you said, that's a huge feat for both of them.
Exactly.
Um,
let me ask you something real quick, bro.
yes.
We talked about Gavin a lot, but I think what this means is that, Sanji finally has an end game like guy to look at, like throughout the story, obviously Luffy, it's like, okay, this guy's going to surpass Roger. He's going to be Nika. He's going to be Joy Boy. Those are the guys you look forward to Luffy's ceiling, right? For Zoro, it's like, okay, this guy's going to be Mihawk. He's going to be Ryuma. He's going to be right above Rayleigh, right?
Yes.
But there was never that figure for Sanji, even though he's like the third guy, right?
Yeah.
So we finally have a guy to look at where it's like, yeah, that's endgame Sanji. And I think it just kind of, the monster trio dynamic never died, but now it's like in the grave, like this dynamic's never ended,
Do you think we get to see Sanji and Scopper interact?
I hope so.
I mean, it makes sense. I feel like Oda would not miss the opportunity for these two to perv out together. Like, I feel like we've got to have that crazy over the top perv out moment with these two.
For sure.
And then,
I also like, dude, how obviously there's the monster trio parallels, but they're still their own characters and their own rights, right? Like Sanji isn't like some Gavin clone, even though they have similar stuff. Zoro isn't like a Rayleigh clone. In fact, Rayleigh is like, decently different, even though they both have like the underworld titles to their name. They're both like, stoic, powerful, badass swordsmen, but they still have their own character qualities that you can distinctly tell for sure. Same with Luffy and Roger.
No, that's a good point. And so then, at the end of their interaction, Scopper turns, tells the guys if Elbath is still safe, and by the end come see him. That's interesting. I like that there's something for us to look forward to at the end of Elbath potentially. Moving forward, we get a little bit more of interactions and some flashback type stuff with Shanks and Scopper, and then we see the Holy Knights back, and the Holy Knights are summoning 2 more members to help them steal giant children.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Talk to me about these 2 guys that show up to be the Holy Knights.
Obviously, pulling up in your underwear is crazy. That's like, that's absolutely wild, bro.
Oh my God.
I'd be so mad if I was summoned, like just chilling on my chair.
Let me ask you this right now. Does that guy and Frankie fight?
It's just so...
That guy's got to be hard-boiled, right? He's got to be.
That's actually really funny. I didn't even think about Frankie. I did kind of think about Zoro because of the sword, but again,
okay, yeah.
At this point, it's like we don't know. That's a funny thing to point out, though.
Like if you show up in your underwear and you know how they have like the hair on their legs a certain way, like what's his name in Dressrosa, Senor Pink. It feels like we could have a hard-boiled situation here, and I'm a fan of that. Like I understand.
I am.
And like you said, it's extremely interesting to show up in your underwear. They brought his whole couch with them. Kind of a funny thing. And then what do you want to call Saint Quillam? Because I'm guessing he's a fish man.
Quillingham or whatever. It looks kind of like a Kieran hybrid form. I mean,
yeah, that's
my first thoughts. I don't know. Kierans are so badass usually in other series, and this one's kind of goofy. So I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. But it's like he literally pulls up in his hybrid form, unless there's just some sort of weird thing about this power,
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird power. In my opinion, that guy's going to get absolutely wrecked by Jinbei.
Okay.
Jinbei. Do you think he's got to be a fish type, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely possible. He's got the trident and everything. There's just so much more I want to see. I mean, obviously.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I saw him, I was like, this guy's getting hit with 1,000 brick fist for sure.
Yeah. What's also interesting is that Saint Somas is the same family as the Gorosei, Jupiter, Shepherd. So, that's always something interesting, getting more lore on some of these royal families and Celestials. Did you also notice how they're both saints, but even Shamrock isn't a saint and, Gunko isn't a saint. So I wonder what that distinction is, right? I've heard some people float around the possibility of, because all the Gorosei are saints. I doubt you can get to the Gorosei without being a saint, right? But what this tells me is that there could be some sort of like system in which you can become a celestial dragon without being like a pureblood, if that makes sense.
So you're in this scenario,
Mhm.
Figureland was not born a celestial dragon,
No, Fig-Arland is for sure.
but he's Shamrock's dad. He has to be.
Yeah, so I'm saying Shamrock is like a half breed of some sort, possibly.
Oh, so he didn't get born in. He has to earn
Exactly.
it.
I think him and
Okay.
Shanks might be half breeds if they're not Saints, because why wouldn't they be, right?
They would. Right.
And
I
Gunko,
guess I didn't notice that.
Gunko could be and then what I was thinking is Gunko could be like a Loki situation, because obviously Loki's not a celestial dragon, but he's literally being recruited to be a holy knight. So if he became a holy knight, he's not Saint Loki, obviously.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm wondering if, like, if there's a certain talent threshold that they find, they're like, hey, we can still recruit this guy and give them honorary celestial dragon status, even though they're not really celestial dragons.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now that you pointed that out, I just figured he was Saint Shamrock Figureland.
Yeah, technically didn't give him the title, right?
No, yeah, you're right. I think you're right, and that makes a lot of sense the way you're putting it now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we meet the next two members. Chapter 1139, 1140. Shady, how now that we've talked about them, we've kind of worked them out. Let's score these chapters out of 10. Obviously, a lot of times they kind of melt together in these scenarios. Like we jumped right into 1140. So maybe let's grade them together. Let's count these two chapters together and we give them one grade.
Sure.
What would you give these two chapters together?
I'll go with a 7.5.
What would have taken it to an 8 for you?
Maybe a little bit more combat with Gavin and Luffy and Zoro. I feel like Oda purposely blue balls us a lot with combat. He's just so stingy with the clashes sometimes, man.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, I think seven's the right spot. I thought, I think saving combat for what's coming is probably for the best. Yeah. I think that it'll be interesting to see the next steps here. Let's predict our next steps. So I'm assuming now that Luffy and Zoro have the key, they go to free Loki. Mm-hmm. Do you think the next real combat is Loki attacking the Holy Knights to get revenge? What do you think is the next step here in the arc?
That's a good one, man. I mean, obviously,
did he survive Cerebus? He was on the verge of getting messed up.
Oh yeah, I mean, the series. People don't die. He's not even going to be like.
He's fine. He's skid right up.
But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, obviously, Luffy's gonna want to ask him about Shanks. But remember, Zoro's there now, and Zoro is still skeptical on whether he wants to even free him or not. I think obviously they will end up freeing him. But
do you think because of Zoro's skepticism, mm-hmm. maybe they have a clash of their own?
Yeah, for
Zoro
sure.
and Loki.
I think
that's something I'm very interested in.
That'd be badass. I mean, Luffy and Zoro, either of them, I would be thrilled to see a clash with Loki. And I just want to learn more about him because, towards the end of that chapter, the Holy Knights talked about King Harold visiting his grave as if he's like his friend. So that makes you think, like, is Harold actually the rat or something? Was he actually working or conspiring with the world government? Because that's a very interesting dialogue there. Maybe Loki walked in on him being exposed or something. Because I think we all agree at this point that Loki, it's not as it's portrayed to be, right?
So a couple chapters ago, let me ask, and came to mind when you were talking about that. When they talk about they had met Big Mom before and she did something unspeakable mm-hmm. or whatever, and she's never allowed. Could that be tied into King Harold somehow? And that's why Loki attacked him and killed, is there any way that somehow like I said, I think King Harold could be the bad guy here too, but could he maybe have made a pact with Big Mom? There's got to be something.
Well, I mean, what we do know is that they tried to marry Loki and Lola. So I assume at some point, things got maybe reconciled to a bit, because obviously when Big Mom was a kid, that's when she had a rampage on the Giants and she killed she killed Yaru, who's like the twin of the old guy right now on Elbaf.
The guy who's got the hair, stab in his head. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe at some point they tried to reconcile with Big Mom, unless I'm forgetting some details. But I think this is all its own conflict, if I'm being honest. The Loki and King Harold thing, I think that is just probably its own thing with the Celestials, because now that the summoning circle is here too, we're gonna find out, more from when Shamrock comes back. I assume he has to take the same portal back. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they can just summon a new one, but I think Shamrock's gonna walk back, and maybe Luffy and Zoro will confront him or see him.
I hope
or
so.
Maybe not.
I would like to see him do something.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that Shamrock is done for the arc, or do you think he's coming back? Because I can't really think of anybody else who's supposed to be the main villain of Elbaf, the main antagonist. Like, nobody else really fits the bill, right?
Unless Loki goes crazy.
Yeah, but I don't think Loki's the
and
main
I don't
villain.
either. But I'm just trying to think: is there another option?
Besides that,
does the world government show up? Like the Navy? Those. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Like you said, he says, I suppose the situation in the Holy Land has gotten dire. Everything started to spiral down after the reverie started. It'd be best for you to hurry back there, Shamrock.
Yeah.
So, what do you think the actual situation is with the Holy Knights? Because what was there 8 of them in the silhouette, or was there 10?
9.
Or 9. So we have 5 other ones. Is 5 not enough to protect the Holy? I'm interested to see. I want to know how strong these guys really are. I believe Shamrock is a very strong. I believe he's in the top tier, but I don't know about Gunko. I don't know about the other 2 who just showed up. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to be on that same tier. And then obviously we still have 5 more members that we haven't even gotten to see yet. What are your feelings on the Holy Knights right now? Since we've seen 4 of them.
My guess is based on the structure of most groups in One Piece that they're going to be like the equivalent of a Yonko crew. So Shamrock is the Yonko, and then everybody else makes up the remaining manpower, right? I don't think there's going to be multiple Yonko Admiral level tier people. I don't think that really makes sense because the factions are usually more balanced in One Piece like that. And I think what you asked is interesting, how they're pulling Shamrock back to the Holy Land, because presumably when Shamrock met with the Gorosei that one time, assuming it's still Shamrock and not Shanks, right? They said that he doesn't get involved in politics too much. So I guess unless it's just a pure strength thing, they just want more meat and muscle back there. I don't know why is he being summoned by the higher ups? Unless is it Fig Arland who's summoning him, because he's technically a higher up now, right? Does Fig Arland want his son back for whatever reason, for whatever agenda he wants to fulfill now as a member of the Gorosei? I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities for why Shamrock's coming back, but. Yeah. I hope he comes back to Elbaf, because I do want to see that, Shanks interaction. I do believe that Shanks is still coming back. So we'll see what happens in between, though.
That's, well said. Okay, my next question for you then. Do we get to see the revolutionaries come into battle now, or come into the fold now? Because like Dragon said, he's waiting for the Holy Knights to make their move. It would make sense that it's time for them to get closer to a clash, something happening between them. Do we get to see Dragon and the Revs on the move?
Yeah, so that's a good point right there. I'm gonna say no for now. No. And the reason being is because I think that all the buildup to the final war, we're gonna be getting clashes, right? Tons of factions clashing, Cross Guild, Marines, everybody's clashing until the final battle, where then we'll finally start to dive into like our final matchups, right? If the Holy Knights are not finished in Elbaf, then I think they'll eventually have a second conflict with the revolutionaries because of what you said with Dragon there. But for now, what's happening in the recent events, I think it's still revolutionaries and Blackbeard pirates are kind of in a little conflict, because that's been going on since like Burgess versus Sabo and whatnot, and then the events that happened on Baltigo, they kind of drove them out, right?
Right.
So I feel like those kind of conflicts are still being intertwined and are occurring, but I do agree with your initial point of the Holy Knights and the Revs eventually having a showdown. I just don't think it's for this arc.
I'm wondering, do you think Shanks is stronger than Shamrock?
Man,
I don't know. I thought the Cerebus attack was like, it was cool, but I just felt like hopefully he has more.
Yeah, I mean,
in his back. I know it's kind of overthinking that small interaction, but I was less, man, if that's I know he was still very confident. I know if he said if Loki was free, he would fight him and handle him. But I was like, man, I wonder because Shanks. We've seen Shanks get injured the one time when Blackbeard snuck him, and we don't know how in depth those clashes with Mihawk went. We obviously know that they were epic, but we don't know, how if they ever injured each other. So I don't know. I was just kind of what if he's not Shanks? What if he's not Shanks?
Yeah, that'd be disappointing. I think he's
so
not
too.
Shanks. I think he has to be on that level, at least. Stronger, I don't know, maybe a little bit weaker, but somewhere in that realm, right? I feel like you don't just introduce somebody's twin brother who's like a foil of you and not have them be on that level, right?
Well, and like Loki said, he's his exact opposite, but he still hates them both. Like I thought that was a good line. I think you're right. I think you're right, and I just sometimes I get into these little pockets of a chapter and a panel, and I overthink like what happened in that one little panel. So I think you're right there.
Yep. I did have another question for you, actually, if you don't mind, real quick. In 1139, Scopper talked about hybrid races and started listing a bunch of names. I just thought they were interesting. Did you have any initial thoughts on what he said? Maybe one of those is the Blackbeard race that we've been looking forward to hearing about. Dosanada, I think is what he said.
Yeah, he said he put the Buccaneers. He put who else did he say was in there? I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
To me, Blackbeard has to be special. Yes. There's been too many references to him having multiple souls, him having multiple beings inside of him. I thought that was a very interesting comment by Scopper. I don't know if he named Blackbeard's race. I think that'd be too spot on, on the head. Obviously maybe mentioning it as there's hybrid forms out there, and then later down the line we'll see that he's a hybrid. I think that would be too close to say flat out, but man, it's cool the way that all together the way Oda's kind of kept everything. Yes, there's tons of intricate different webs, but he's kind of kept them all in that same universe, so well. I'm really interested to see about the hybrids because, do you remember who the Buccaneers were hybrids with?
I think it's implied to just be some sort of giant human,
right? Like a half giant and a person,
half giant. Because I know Kuma was a half Buccaneer because his dad was a Buccaneer and his mom was a human.
That's what it was. Yeah. So
yeah,
what was it? So it's Buccaneers, long leg, long necks, wotons. They're
that's like a Chinese food or something.
Dosandadas. Yeah, so that's interesting, but Oda wouldn't put that in there for no reason. So obviously there is something to it, and I'm glad you caught that, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Obviously, I would like to learn more about Blackbeard sooner than later also.
Yep, 100%. And then obviously the last part of that chapter I think is key when Shamrock says, let's make a game out of it. So people have been speculating, is this the next God Valley, like a hunting game? Obviously they're trying to get the children out, but they can't bring the children through the portal because they don't have the mark, which is what he said, which I thought was interesting too. So it's confirmed that you need to have some sort of mark from Emu, presumably, to be able to go through the abyss is what they called it.
Yep. Yeah. First thing I thought of when they said that was the hunting game and bringing back, the old celestial dragon stuff that started God Valley.
It's so weird though, bro, because do they really think they can pull this off without Shamrock? The Straw Hats are there. Gabon is there. It seems like they're and then this is Shanks' territory. So obviously, if you're doing something on Shanks' territory, he's going to respond. I just wonder what the logic is here. Do they really think that they have the manpower to pull this off?
Do they know Luffy and them are there?
That's what I was wondering too.
Because if he doesn't have that same level of radar, like Scopper had and like Luffy's shown from time to time, like Zoro's shown, that's a problem too, because he should be able to feel them there, but they also haven't really felt him there besides Scopper. He felt Shamrock.
He felt like the ominous aura from the.
So I'm confused that again, this could just be an inconsistency, and it's hard to write all this into panels sometimes. So there's a lot that goes into that. it's just interesting that how sometimes they feel this and they don't feel that. It's a big undertaking to have when there's an army of giants. There's Luffy. There's all these, like you said. So they obviously have to get stopped. Every time children's been involved, Luffy's stopped them. The Straw Hats have stopped them. So, but yeah, without Shamrock, Gunko and the other two are gonna pull this off by themselves.
It's just three of them.
It's a lot to ask, and that's why I think this is a good opportunity for, Jinbei to fight one of them, Frankie to have a hard-boiled fight, and maybe even Robin because of her connection to the children, and getting to see Saul again. Maybe she gets to fight Gunko and gets to flex that demon form again. We get another opportunity for Robin to potentially have hockey.
Yo,
I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up on. I'm not giving up on this crew, Shady. I'm not giving up on them.
I respect it.
They need it. They need to have it.
Yeah.
No, but I potentially.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. Again, that's why I was always under the impression that this is going to be the arc of the Holy Knights. All 9 of them are going to pull up, and it's going to be like the Straw Hats versus the Holy Knights.
It would have made sense for that.
Kind of like a perfect blend. But again, like we just talked about, maybe this is just the introductory arc for the Holy Knights, and Shamrock's not even supposed to fight here. He's supposed to fight later down the line because Shanks could be his matchup for all we know. I think I've heard people speculate that they're based off Roman mythology. I don't know if you've heard of Romulus and Remus, the twins, and one twin kills the other.
It's similar to Cain and Abel, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So could be that, who knows?
I don't hate that at all. I just, you introduce these characters and they have that Holy Knight moniker, you expect a certain level. So I'm looking forward to where we go next. I'm looking forward to see, what Loki can really do. I'm looking forward to see, there's a lot of great stuff that is being set up in Elbaf. So excited to see where we go next. Shady, we've been here, 37 minutes. We've talked both chapters. We've gotten to some fun conversation here and there. Reese was going to join us, but we went a little later than we were supposed to. Hopefully he can get back with us next week or next time. Next time we're going to do some lore, talk a little One Piece lore. So that'll be a fun conversation to have. Any last thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
I feel like we pretty much hit most of the key points on the chapter, honestly. I mean, just excited for the next one.
Right.
Simple
I think
we're
in a really good spot, man. I think we're in a really good spot with One Piece right now. So those are the final thoughts. Guys, thank you for watching the show. We appreciate it. If you could go to the Cross Guild Chronicles YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button, we appreciate it. I'm Doug. That's my guy Shady, and we will be back sometime soon. I'm not going to give a date. Sometime soon. Thank you, guys. See ya.
All right.